Good evening. I will call actually, we're going to start with the Nantucket Regional Transit Authority meeting, and then we'll move on to the select board meeting. Tonight, we are doing something a little different because we're back to meeting entirely remotely just for this evening. So we will be doing everything by roll call vote. And all board members, please leave your cameras on unless absolutely necessary to step away for something. And as we go through, please try and alert me by raising your hand, but if for some reason I miss it, just do speak out so I don't miss anyone. And we will open with that and go to the administrator report on the Nantucket Regional Transit Authority. Gary Roberts, I think you have quite a few items to bring us through.
Well, we're going to try to be quick tonight. There's just a
Yeah,
few
I
items.
appreciate the write-up on each. That was really helpful.
I just wanted to give an update on with the administrator report on where we stand. Last meeting, we discussed the operations contract that with our operator of VTS of Mass. We've entered into negotiations to change from the current contract, which is an operations contract that's paid at an hourly rate for the hours of service. And I'm looking to change that to a cost plus contract, which basically means that the NRTA picks up all the cost to run the business, and then there's a fee to the management company to do the work. Currently, the way it works is we pay them a large sum of money to run the business, and then they pay the bills with the money. This changing it to a cost plus is far more transparent to everyone where the funds are going. We've made great progress, and I would think within a week or two, I'm hoping next time we meet that we'll have the contract put together and to get an approval from the board to move forward with that contract. And that's basically that's the only thing that I had on the operations contract. I don't know if there's any questions about what we're doing with the contract.
Board members, any questions? And
No questions.
Do you need any kind of a vote from us?
No vote on that. There's only 2 items that'll need a vote tonight. I'll move on to the staffing.
One second, Gary, just
Yep.
let me let everyone know. When it's not an item that you're on for, could you actually turn your camera off? So I just have the board and whoever we're speaking with, it'll just make it a lot more streamlined. Thank you.
Okay. Staffing, I had discussed at our last meeting that some changes that we're making. So I have added a new position to oversee the facilities that we have between the maintenance facility and the Greenhound facility and the bus stops and all that. Oops, I lost my space here. And he's going to work directly with the operator of the bus system to monitor the operations. Randall Elms has accepted the position of operations and facilities manager. He is working directly underneath me, the administrator, to provide the daily oversight of the operations and all the facilities that we have. He's moving very quickly into his role and has taken a lot of the pressure off of me on the day-to-day stuff that happens with the operation of the buses. He's in constant contact with the management company, and we're making a lot of changes, and it helps to have Randy here to get those things done. One of the other things that I have done was I pulled the maintenance part of the operations out of the contract. That was done before the new contract was determined. That's something that we can do because we have the funding in our budget to cover the cost of the maintenance employees. This way, NRTA has full control of what maintenance is being done to the vehicles. the decision process is streamlined from my office to what needs to be done with the vehicles to prepare ourselves for the upcoming season. So effective that began at the start of the year, we're going to be overseeing all the maintenance of all the equipment, all the buses, the island ride vans, and any support equipment that the transit authority does own. So that's just a quick update on staffing changes. I didn't know if there was any questions with that.
No, I'm seeing no questions from the board.
Okay, so we'll move on to the fleet electrification, if I can get my mouth to work. I'm very happy to announce that the first two battery electric buses for the island have been delivered. The buses went through post-delivery inspection. There was the very start of training. There'll be full in-depth training for the mechanics and the drivers for these new vehicles. There's a lot of changes that have to be made for running electric vehicles. They came in, there were no issues with post-delivery. The destination signs and the bike racks had to be installed once they were delivered because they came in separately. The charging systems for the vehicles to be used at the maintenance facility have arrived in the past week. And we are going through the work for all the infrastructure upgrades that have to be done. We have to pull more power into the building. I've met with the airport commission. We have a permit that we're working on to bring in the first phase of bringing extra power into the building for level 2 chargers. We will need to have a second phase to be done to bring in level 3 chargers, which will quickly charge the buses and handle any expansion of the fleet. In addition, Mass DEP has approved funding through the Mass DOT for the purchase of an additional 3 electric buses. The funding part now is moved on to the MPO for approval. It's about $900,000 that was granted to NRTA to buy these buses. Once the MPO starts the process, there's a review period for approval, for public comment, and then the funding will be released, and we'll be adding 3 more buses to the fleet. So it's good news that, one of the things I started when I came here is I wanted to transition to electric vehicles in the areas that we can. The process has started with 2 here. We get the other 3 in, that's 5 buses, along with the 4 smaller gas-powered cutaway vehicles that we're currently operating on the vehicles on the routes this winter. I'm hopeful that the noise complaints drop dramatically. People will be excited about the electric buses, and it's just the first step in our plan as we move ahead to replace the fleet of buses here.
Brooke?
Do you expect the 3 additional vehicles to be here in time for the summer season?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
The vehicles that we have chosen, and it's a contract that we signed along with the vineyard. The lead time to get these vehicles is very short. So there'll be no concerns of getting this done. The infrastructure work is gonna, there's a process to doing it. We were granted monies from Remain Nantucket for a level 3 charger to be put at the Greenhound to charge the buses through the course of the day. There's some steps to getting that done. The charger has been delivered. The grant money was released and we purchased the charger, so we do have it. We're going through the steps of the design and what work will need to be done. I have a meeting with the state on Friday that we're going to look for more funding to help with the installation of the charger. If it doesn't come through, we're going to find other means to get it installed. It's a priority to get the charging equipment set up to be able to run the buses for the season.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, the next item that we have will require a vote on this one. The state had come up with a pilot program last year for fare free to the transit authorities to do for the winter holiday season to cover the cost in December. This year with the Fair Share Funding Act, there was $15 million made available to the RTAs across the state to expand the fare free. They call it Tri-Transit 2.0. It was up to each transit authority to determine what they would apply for and how much in funding they're asking for. You could do up to 6 months, and the total cost would be covered by the state. I decided to put in for the grant for the total of 6 months. And we were awarded the grant from Mass DOT to provide 6 months of fare free for all services, fixed route and demand response services. I've decided to do April through the end of September. The best way to judge this if fare free benefits the island is to do it when our season is the busiest, when the roads are congested. The hope is that people will try transit, use the bus. They do not have to worry about figuring out paying for the buses, buying passes. It'll be get on the bus, get off the bus. We track the ridership. There'll be no charge to anyone. One of the things when I came here, and I've noticed in the summers in the past, and I'm sure others have, you sometimes sit behind the bus at a bus stop as people are trying to board the bus. They may be tourists. They don't understand how the fare equipment works, if they need cash, exact fare, and there's a lot of waiting behind the bus for passengers to board the bus. Taking away the fare aspect of it, it's hopeful that we're going to move along with the buses to move quickly. To on-time performance will improve. We increase ridership. If people know that they can just hop on the bus and go, we're really hopeful that this is a true test to see if fare free is the way that we should go to get more people to ride in the buses. As a side note, the electronic fare collection equipment that we have in the buses cost, in the range of $19,000 to $20,000 per vehicle just for the equipment to be in the vehicle. On top of that, we have to buy all the fare media that is used to give change cards, all the passes that have to be purchased to sell to the customers. So along with, increasing ridership, it's going to cut down on a ton of maintenance. The equipment really takes a lot of maintenance. Nothing is cheap. If you have to replace a board, circuit board in one of these units, we're talking $1,500 to $3,000 depending on the part. A lot of the items cannot be fixed in-house. They have to be sent out for repair. And there's downtime for chasing vehicles that cannot collect fares and can't give out change cards. This is the time to do the true test, seeing how the state will be paying for the entire cost to run this pilot. So we did receive a grant of $410,000 to cover this time period. The way we've calculated everything, it's not going to affect the budget. The one thing that I need a vote on, I do not feel that it's fair to have our passengers come in to buy a period pass for the entire year at the full cost of the ticket if we are going to provide 6 months for free. So I am proposing that all of our period passes be reduced by 50% during this time. This was also calculated into the amount of funding that was requested to cover the costs that'll be lost with this. The only part of it is our seasonal passes that we do sell, which is just the summer season. A lot of businesses buy these for their employees to be able to get to work. There really is not a need to buy the seasonal pass because the season's cost will be covered. So I'm going to need a vote to approve or if that's what the board feels to go along with this.
Okay, Matt has a question or a comment.
I'll make a comment, then I'll make a motion. Well, I guess I have a question first. Have you quantified what the savings would be? You know, how close we are with, with all the other savings, the time, or is that have you done a rough calculation?
I did a rough calculation to come up with the past numbers. So what we did was we took ridership over the past 2 years, took the average of it. We took our revenue costs that we brought in through the fare collection, and then we took our past sales that we did, and we did a calculation on the annual pass to reduce the cost. The seasonal pass, it's random. I went back and looked, like 5 or 6 years, I went back and looked at, I think some of the businesses, there was a push to get the businesses to buy passes for their employees. I think we've noticed over the past 5 years in the beginning, there was strong numbers with some businesses of buying passes, and whether it be enforcement to say, hey, you need to buy passes for your employees was part of, an agreement. Some of them have curtailed off. Some of them are still strong. I mean, we did 711 seasonal passes to businesses last year. There's different rates dependent on students, and if it's reduced fare, a full fare, or commuter passes. So we did, I did a pretty good analysis to come up with a number to make sure that we're covered. There is still, at our last meeting with the state, there's still funding available. A lot of the transit authorities did not take advantage of the program. Some decided to do 1 month. Several did 6 months. We're one of, I think, 3 authorities that spread it out over the course of 2 fiscal years, because our year ends June 30th. But I didn't see the benefit to try to do this in January with the ridership numbers being low. The only way to see if it's really going to be effective is to do it through the season when we're really carrying passengers and traffic is at its worst here. So I really think that we came up with a very close number to cover this, and there is some room to go back to the state if we feel that we're a little short.
Yeah, my thought was things like the fare boxes and all that. That all adds up. Counting the money, tallying it every night, going to the bank. A lot of that stuff doesn't seem like much, but when you add it up, it's substantial. I think that this is a great, a great test that we're doing, and I think it's something I would love to have seen 10 years ago. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the 50% reduction in the fares.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this program works, what kind of results we get from it.
One of the things that I wanted to just pass along that we did through RTA cap funding that I was able to receive, I think it was back in April or May. We have added, we're adding tablets to all the vehicles. So even we use the fare box to generate our passenger accounts where we can verify the money being brought in to our ridership numbers. So to add to that step, there's tablets being installed in all the vehicles that shows the driver the route. Sometimes they might be new to the area when they're driving. It's kind of like Waze, where it shows the route that they're driving, but there's also on it the ability to add the rider and subtract the rider as they board and leave the bus, as a secondary way to back up our numbers to show our ridership. And then along with that, it's going to show where our ridership is actually occurring, where the strengths and weaknesses are. So along with seeing, what it does with our ridership, adding this other part to the equation. We're actually going to be able to track better where our routes are actually performing and where we need to improve on along with that. So I think that we're going to have a very good, we've been testing the tablets since I think early December. They've been out there where the drivers are, there's a little bit of a learning curve. That's another feature that they have to hit a button to track, but we're actually seeing when the people are getting on the bus and when they're getting off the bus to better plan the routes and changes that need to be made.
Anything else?
The last item that I have is the executive compensation. We had met at the last meeting for the compensation for the administrator for FY24. We're a little bit behind on that. So we had a discussion at the last meeting. I met with the finance committee, and we're just bringing that back in front of the board.
Okay, finance committee, do you have a final recommendation?
I'll move approval.
Okay, any further, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you. And it looks like our final item on the agenda before adjournment is public comment. Is there anyone here wishing to make a public comment in regard to Nantucket Regional Transit Authority business that is not otherwise on our agenda? I'm seeing no hands, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you,
All
Gary.
right, thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Soon.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, now we are moving to the select board meeting at 5:52. I don't believe that there are any changes to the agenda, so we will accept it and move to, well, there really are, the only announcement is that this is being video and audio recorded. And are there any opening announcements from the board? Brooke?
I'd like to say thank you to everyone who participated in the solid waste meeting next week, particularly to George Aronson for an exceptional presentation, and to let the community know that the recording of that meeting and information session is linked on the long-term solid waste planning work group page of the town website. It's linked right there. A little harder to find if you try to go to YouTube. It's someone I know found out today, but it's right there on the town website. And I really encourage everyone who wasn't able to attend to take a listen to what's happening in solid waste, current operations and planning.
Yes, it was a great meeting. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll have committee reports at the end. There is some follow-up on our select board meeting from our last select board meeting on the 10th. And I believe Libby Gibson is going to address those items.
Thank you. So we had a few public comments. There was a request for an update on affordable housing things. We have scheduled an update on affordable housing current projects and initiatives for the board's February 7th meeting. There was a request about the status of the HDC operational review. We had been working to schedule this with our consultants and other parties that will be present for a meeting with the board and the HDC. There were a number of conflict dates, and long story short, it looks like we now have this scheduled for a joint select board HDC meeting that would take place at the board's regular Wednesday meeting on February 21st. And the report is being finalized, and that will get out to everybody very shortly. There was a request for an update on the Select Board Planning Commission review of the Memorandum of Agreement for operation of the Plus Department. We were working on non-Select Board Wednesday dates in January and February for this joint meeting between the Select Board and the Planning Commission. That was a little tricky to schedule because of the meeting room availability and other meetings going on. But again, long story short, I think we have landed on Tuesday, February 20th at 6 p.m. in the trailer, room A. And we'll get a invite out to the board on that. Lastly, there was a request, a question as to whether the finance department would be part of the negotiations for select board pay. No, there would not be any negotiations on this that involve any town staff. The select board compensation is established by town meeting. There was a board request, not a public comment item, but while I'm here doing some follow-ups, there was a request to have the topic of boat discharge be brought up at a board meeting, and that has been scheduled for February 7th.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next up, we have, this is the public comment portion of our agenda for select board items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. I should have mentioned that at the NRTA public comment. I'm not seeing any hands. I'll just give it 1 second. Okay, seeing none, there's no new business. We'll move on to approval of minutes and warrants. We can take those as one unless there are any changes or comments.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Those carry unanimously. Citizen Departmental Committee requests and reports. First up, we have Ticcoma Green request for land development agreement extension and project update for the housing development at 6 Fairgrounds Road. Christy Parentella, did you want to introduce this?
Yes, thank you. Tonight we have Mark Hess and Andy Burns here to provide us with an update on 6 Fairgrounds. To remind everybody, this is a 64-unit rental development that has been through some delays due to a neighbor appeal of the special permit and then the increased price of construction due to COVID. An important part of this project that I just want to remind the select board is that if the timing lines up, this could provide us with 2 years of safe harbor. And our current period of safe harbor expires December 11th of this year. So right now they are requesting an extension of their due diligence period. And I'm going to pass it over to Mark and Andy to provide us with the update.
Okay. Thank you, Christy. This is Andy Burns from Hall-Keene. I'm one of the principals at Hall-Keene. Mark Hess, who has been before the board and has been intimately involved in the project, is with us tonight. Thank you for listening to us and listening to our request for an extension. This has been a long process. When I look back at the timeline of when I first came out with Mark in the RFP process back in 2016, I think it was, a lot has changed in the world. And frankly, it's really been one of the hardest projects that we've ever been involved with in almost 35 years of work. And I would say that we are at a point, we've gone through, as Christy said, we went through the appeal, went through the permitting process, then went through the appeal process, then went back out to the state stakeholders and worked with the town to put the funding together, back to deal with some of the increased costs. And, time has passed, things have gotten even more complicated, but we are, at this point, we're trying to dot the I's and cross the T's and get this project done by, close our current schedule is try to get it closed, the end of the 3rd quarter, the middle of the 4th quarter. We've got a ways to go. And frankly, this extension is a really critical piece for our moving forward. One of the things that I would say in the intervening time, Hall-Keene has gone through some changes from the perspective that we've brought in a joint venture partner, Civico Development out of the Boston area is going to be working with us going forward. My partners have, they're looking to ease out of the business after being involved in real estate ownership and management for over 50 years. And we're very excited to be working with Civico on this transaction. We've talked to Christie and Tucker about this over the last several months, last month and a half, I guess, as we've finalized the transaction or the relationship with Civico. But we are at this point sort of touching base with all the major stakeholders. Obviously, this meeting is quite important, answering any questions that you might have. And also, we have been in contact and working with the folks at DHCD, which I never can remember their new name. But in any event, we had a conference, a phone conference with Kate Racer a couple of weeks ago. They are very anxious to see this project move forward. We are, putting together material for their final blessing, if you will. But there are, getting the extension from the town to go through this last phase of due diligence and answer any questions and get this project ready for the closing ramp is really where we're at the moment. I'd like to turn it over to Mark. Mark has been involved. Many of you have seen Mark over the years, and he's been to numerous meetings before, with the planning board and then with the HDC. And I think we're ready to really devote all of our energies at this point to get this project done. So, Mark, do you want to step in here at this point?
Sure, great. Thanks, Andy. And thanks all for having us and your patience here. I know this is something we're all eager to see move forward. Tucker and Christie made it very clear about the goal of the 12/11 closing. And Kate Racer has similarly impressed upon us that in order for her to give us the final green light, we need to demonstrate to her overall project feasibility, and we have a path, and that we can also get closed before year end with some cushion, because some of the resources and the commitments, the funds need to be committed by DHCD, or excuse me, it's now EOHLC, my apologies, before year end, or the state may lose an opportunity to use those for a different project. So they sort of have a expiration date. And you may be aware that this particular project, when you add up all of the state and quasi-state resources and what it means to the projects, it's about $31 million. So it's not a small commitment that the various agencies have put together in order to try to make this project possible. So they are looking at that, and they're, they see this as a priority, as a real important project. But this sort of final piece where we've gone out and gotten extra updates from our general contractor. Of course, the interest rate environment has been very unhelpful, as have some of the operating costs like insurance. Many of you may be running into that, but the project has seen a lot of stress. And what Kate's message to us on the 2nd, when we had a call with her, was, we want to see the project done, and you got to come back to us and show that you're able to get it done, and what your critical path is. And over the last, our update was just right over the Christmas holidays from the contractor. So we've been kind of grinding out scenarios in order to figure out what we can support and prove out project feasibility over the holidays and into the beginning of January. And we're at a point right now where we're ready to put a package together and have a call with Kate and EOHLC to give them an idea of where we're at. And we do, if you look at the timeline we'd shared in the exchanges with Christie and Tucker previously, we're a little behind that schedule, but not drastically, maybe a couple weeks at this point based on that timeline. we do have a challenge right now. We have significant increases in construction costs and interest carry on the project. We've got that number down to about a $2.3 million delta, which we will be discussing with Kate as part of what we need in order to get the project across the finish line. And, you know, we'll be turning over every stone on our end as well, to see if I mean, it's a very large number, but we're well over $50 million total development cost. And when you look at in the context of where we're at, we're also quite close, in terms of getting in the ground. So that is, that's our job. That's Andy's job, and my job is to, prove out that the final effort, the final expense on our part, and the final commitments from you folks and DHCD are good and valid, and efforts and money and time well spent, and that we can meet the year-end deadline. And we'll hopefully, Kate will continue to be supportive and part of the solution, and we hope to have that feedback for you all within the next couple weeks at this point. That's sort of the high level in terms of where we are with the project. I'm not sure, Christy, if you have anything to offer. I'm sure folks have questions, and I'm happy to answer what I can at this point.
Okay, Matt and then Malcolm.
Malcolm, I always talk. You can go first. I'll go second.
Malcolm, go
Well,
ahead.
I look forward to your talks. I mean, sort of all linked. I mean, it seems to me you're a little behind in your schedule, and Kate obviously is giving you a little challenge. And what's your confidence level that you're going to make this? Because if we don't make that December 8th or December 15th, it messes up some of our plans. I know it's hard to give a probability of success, but what's your confidence here? Because obviously you're behind, and you admit you're behind, and Kate's giving you a little push. So you need to get us comfortable.
We're certainly not lily white in terms of, you know, not having some accountability in terms of where we're at, and we're fine to own our role in it. There have been also external factors that we've been dealing with. I mean, Kate has an important job to do, and as a steward of a limited amount of resources. So I hesitate to speak for Kate after I've doing projects with her for 25 years in the organization. And certainly over the last 5 years, my record of making odds on between COVID and challenges and things like that has not been perfect. So I'm not sure it's worthwhile for me to hazard a guess. I think that one thing we're very lucky in this state is that EOHLC and that whole team, they're very sophisticated. They're very interested in what the town is doing in their level of commitment and the resources that you've put up and the patience to try to get this done. I think it's really served the town and the project very well. And if she has the capability to solve the problem, she will. And I think it's not totally up to her, and she's got to review it with her team, and they have their own limitations. But we wouldn't, you know, we're a pretty small team right now at Hall Keene, and this is our number one priority. It's where the majority of our resources right now are going in order to try to be successful. And we wouldn't, if we thought we were at a point where it was time to give up, we would. And that's not where we are right now. We think it's an effort we should continue to make, and we are. I mean, you don't get into development without being an optimist. So that's kind of where we are. We think we can be successful, and there's just a lot of points right now we don't fully control, and we have to put our best presentation forward and see what the response is.
I'll let Matt go ahead. Then I have a couple of questions and a couple for Christy later.
Okay. Andy, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think the Mark raises the point of, you know, these projects are incredibly complicated. They've only gotten more complicated. Obviously, you've seen the challenges of building affordable housing. I can't handicap what our efforts are going to be. But I can tell you, we've been working on this project for a long time. We've got a lot of resources invested in it. And if we think it's time to throw in the towel after, going around and talking to all the stakeholders, including Kate, we will be back to you to put the cards on the table and say, hey, we just can't do this. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. But we are, that's why we're here tonight, because we think it's worth going to the end and pushing it forward. And I would say that we've done that over the years, and we've been very successful at pushing very hard projects forward. And I would hope that we can push this one across the goal line. We understand there's a deadline for you, deadline for Kate, and we're going to work our hardest to get it through the goal line, across the goal line.
And there are paths forward. It's not like we're just throwing our hands up. There are some specific paths forward, and some funding strategies to talk through with EOHLC.
Which I would say one of the things that was pretty clear in the conversation with Kate earlier in January is that by the end of the conversation, she was being very, very creative and helpful as to how we could solve the problems to get this thing done. And she was, I thought, pretty fair and level-headed and supportive of us continuing to work this project through to get it done.
Well, that's what's very important to us, is for you to continue to have this high level of commitment, because this project's
right.
Something we've invested.
You got it from us right now.
Okay. Matt, go ahead.
For my first question is for Christy. What does this do to the town if this doesn't happen by December? Are we all set for another year or two for shy, or where are we on the shy list and the impact if this doesn't go through?
Through you, John. So the Affordable Housing Trust has been working on several scenarios. We are always kind of working on a plan B and plan C. And so, at least one option is 135, 137 Orange Street, which would provide 1 year of safe harbor. And that's currently still going through the RFP process. So we're still kind of looking at other avenues. This was kind of our plan A, and that's really where we're trying to push this forward. But we are always, seeking other opportunities and trying to line up other things. I know we've been saying this for several years, and I always use Tucker's analogy. We're landing a really big plane on a really small runway. And even in the last, 4 or 5 weeks that I've been over shadowing Tucker, things change, and we're trying to run with it and try to find other opportunities to build housing, because regardless of shy list, we want these 64 units of housing on Nantucket.
Just a clarification, but are we counting on this by December to be good for the shy for the next year? Is that?
Yes, so this is our plan A. If this closes in time, this would provide us with 2 years of safe harbor.
Okay. And so we were out of safe harbor at the end of this year.
Correct.
Okay. The next, so that's a little frightening to me, based on that we're counting on this for it at this point because of the way the world is. We're discussing sort of, they'll throw, if they have to throw in the towel, and I understand that, or what do either of us have responsibility if the town tonight voted to say we want to throw in the towel? And I'm not saying we do that, but can both sides of this walk away at this point with, what is our financial or legal exposure from either side if we decided not to go forward at this point?
Who was that directed?
Is that a question?
Whoever's smart enough to answer it.
On our side, I mean, my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, is that we really need to have Nantucket's support to move forward. If you decided tonight not to give us the extension, I don't think we would go forward. We would go back to Kate and say, Kate, Nantucket wants to go in a different direction. On our side, we want to solve the problems and go forward. But we do need to get all the stakeholders committed to making this project work. And that includes Nantucket, includes the DHCD and all of the funding sources, as well as trying to finalize a budget that we're all comfortable with. And we're going to push that as hard as we possibly can, as Mark said, on our end. And, we have not, we don't have an absolute ironclad solution on our end for this project yet. And we'll be back to you. If we have problems, we're going to be back to you pretty quickly. It's not going to hang along. I mean, we're focusing a lot of effort on this right now. And if we can't put it together, at some point you just say it doesn't work. I mean, these construction costs are absolutely, we're way, way beyond the state's per unit costs on this project. I mean, that was one item that really surprised me in the conversation with Kate back in the beginning of January. They're not concerned about the costs of this project right now on one level. I mean, they're concerned that we don't have all the answers. We don't have a budget that we're completely comfortable with yet, but the per unit cost is way beyond their guidelines. And yet that's not a negative from their perspective right now. And that's
not the biggest negative.
It's not the biggest negative. Let's put it, that's not going to be the reason that they walk away from it.
Just to follow, my point is, if you say you can't do it, we part friends and we say we tried our best. Thank you very much. There's no, and vice versa. There's no, there's no hard feelings. There's no lawsuits because something didn't happen. We've all done the best we could do. That correct?
That's from our end. That is absolutely true.
Right.
We understand this has taken longer than we all would have expected. And there is no, we agree that some of the delays, we wish we could have been able to perform sooner. But there have been a number of different factors that we've dealt with at Hall-Keene and the environment that we've been working in that have just been really, really tough. And but we don't have a recourse to you, and I don't think that you have recourse to us, but I'm not a lawyer, and I would want to make that clear.
Great, thank you.
Brooke?
So, I don't really have a question. I guess it's more a request that communication stay open and forthcoming and regular as you're working through this, because we have at the Affordable Housing Trust and the Select Board level here some decisions to make in terms of the timeline on other alternatives, as Christy referred to as Plan B and C. That ideally we don't execute and then have all of it come at once, because then we've sort of spent our safe harbor units more quickly than we would, like to line them up typically, because we're trying to stay in safe harbor long enough to get to our 10%. So I think it's really helpful that the members of the trust and Christy in the housing office have as much information as we're moving along to be able to monitor the status of our backup planning to replace this for the safe harbor in December if we absolutely need to. And I know they're working on that in the sidelines, but there will be decision points where we have to move something ahead. And knowing the likelihood of this will drive some of that decision making, I think, if Christy, if I said that well. So I would ask for consistent and regular communication, and for Christy to channel that up through to the board level in the next few months, as you're learning more from Kate and nailing things down.
Absolutely. I mean, I think both of us have said, both Mark and I have said, we're putting a lot of resources into this right now, and whether it's, I would assume that we would be talking to Christy on a weekly basis.
Okay, are there any other questions? I have a couple. Oh, Malcolm?
Just a short one, sort of follow up what Brooke was referring to for Christie. Is there a date where you really have to know that this isn't going to work? So you can work on, get Plan B and Plan C functioning? I mean, we have December 15th, but it seems to me like if we decide on December 15th, we're not going to do this, you're going to be really running around.
Right, through you, Don, the Affordable Housing Trust would need several months to line up another option, and make sure, that goes through.
So there needs to be another time here where we talk and get a better probability of success.
Absolutely. I think when I talked with Andy and Mark today, they're going to be meeting with Kate, and as soon as we have kind of a more detailed timeline and information from Kate and a commitment from her, that we need to circle back and just make sure that, again, all the stakeholders are on board with moving forward, and in the next kind of 6 weeks to know if this is going to move forward or not.
I think that's a reasonable time frame, in that it was very clear from Kate that she wants to know as well, because if she's going to reallocate her ARPA money, she wants to know, 6 weeks, 2 months, 6 weeks from now. It was 2 months from when she was talking the beginning of January. So I think that time frame makes sense all around, and for us as well. We need to figure this out. Start to move to a closing or move on.
Madam Chair, should we postpone this vote till we have that information? Can we, if we vote to extend,
the problem that we have is that the vote is very important for us to know that we have your support. And if we can't make it, you're gonna be able to terminate that relationship.
I withdraw my comment.
I had one last question before we vote. And just wanted to address, are you willing to work with us on the idea of not only the local preference, but a municipal employee preference, as we've developed for 31 Fairgrounds?
Yes, so and Tuck and I spoke about that, and actually this came up early in the process as well, where even in some of the RFP responses, the trick on the local preference is really more EOHLC's requirement and making sure that all the units count for the shy list. And so there are some strict rules about that. So we're willing to do whatever limit EOHLC allows, because they're not going to allow us to do anything that gets us in trouble for fair housing or that messes with your shy or whatever that kind of. So we have no objection to that, and we see the demand, we see why that makes sense. But it's really just, what are the rules? So the short answer is yes, we'll do whatever you and EOHLC agree to.
Okay, excellent. Is someone willing to make a motion at this point?
I will move that we approve the extension of the diligence period and the request is to December 15th, correct?
I will second that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favor by roll call: Matt Fee.
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Let's try and bring this over the finish line.
Okay. And just one quick comment, Don. I think we should, if you can put this on in about 2 months, month and a half, 2 months. And I think if at that point, we have to sort of see where this stands, and we need to get Plan B started. We need to move. And so, we will have a very upset populace if we, drop the ball on this after all the hard work everyone has done. Mm-hmm. So I think that we have a couple months from now, 6 weeks from now, we should be, sort of ramping up Plan B. Thank you.
I'll keep that on my radar, and if Christy could stay in touch with Halkeen and come back with an update. Tom?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just say real quick that as the newer select board rep to the trust, I know that Tucker for many, many months and now Christie have been working on plan A, B, and C. So it didn't just come up now. They've been kind of, as this has been shifting and evolving, that they have been working diligently on it. So it's good to have an update from Andy and Mark tonight. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. We appreciate the vote and appreciate the support. Hope we can get this done.
Yep, we look forward to the
Thank you.
next step.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you.
We remain optimistic.
As do we. Thank you.
Great. Next on our agenda is another housing officer request for letter of support for Bill H 4138, an act known as the Affordable Homes Act.
Move approval.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Rick Moore,
Aye.
and Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Christy.
Thank
And
you all.
we move on to town managers report review of proposed FY 2025 enterprise fund budgets, Island Home
Sure.
and Water. Yes,
I'm sorry, can I just interject a housing related comment?
sure.
That the open period for written comments on the transfer fee legislation to the governor's housing bond bill is now. And so Christy has some information and hopefully we're going to push it out through town social media, but I want to encourage the community to, this is it. This is the next opportunity to influence the conversation up at the State House on this transfer fee legislation and some other things. So please consider using the draft that Christy has created and amending it and adding your personal story and getting written testimony in because it matters.
Yes, and just for the board as well, I was asked today by Tucker and jointly Christy to sign an op-ed jointly with Somerville and Concord to go in the Boston Globe, which I think we should sign on to. If we're good on that, next up is the enterprise fund budgets. Libby, which are we doing
Okay.
next first?
So, I think we are doing, sorry, our Island Home. Thank you, our Island Home. And I think we have Peter Holden, our administrator here
Do
to
you
go
guys-
over it.
Okay, do you guys see me? I mean, I can't.
Yes.
I can't. Okay, you
Peter,
do.
we can see you. You might have lost us because, we've shared the screen now.
I don't see your face, but I see your name. So-
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't seem to get the video on it. I'm not trying to hide.
And no worries, just go
Okay.
ahead and present it.
Okay. So, I'm pretty excited about presenting this to you. I never did a Zoom budget before, so this will be our first time. We changed the mission statement going forward from previous. We really worked on it and we decided to change it. And I'm just going to read it. We are committed to enhancing our residents' daily lives by creating an environment in which they and their families feel at home and by employing individuals who are compassionate and providing dignified care. We seek to create lasting relationships with our residents and family by utilizing consistent caregivers and ensuring residents are the primary participants in their care. I can see this happening with the way our risk meetings are changing. We are becoming more patient-centered in this facility, and that's with the help of E&F oversight, but also with the management that we have from our DON and our other management staff in here. So yes, we are changing the focus of our mission in the facility, but we are really becoming more family-oriented in resident care. And I hope you guys see that in the future. Moving on, with the department goals, my main focus, me personally, is to continue to reduce the gap between the subsidies from the town and the revenue gain from the facility here. We are trying really hard to close the gap on that, and I hope you do see that going forward in my short history here. Also, ENF has put in a lot of oversight and a lot of systems in this building, much more than I see in other buildings, but they are really on top of their game here. Goal 2, we are improving our quality measures to increase the current star rating. Based on what we've done in the last 6 months, hopefully you will see that. Goal 3, we're developing strategies to attract and retain personnel to ensure proper staffing. We are doing that. I think everybody in town is doing the same thing. I'm pretty impressed with the talent in the of the town's employees and the the basic people that you have working for the town, and we are doing the same thing in the facility. Go forward, strengthening marketing to increase the daily census in the Medicare admissions. The initiatives. Now, this is what we've done just recently. We did establish a contract with the new therapy team to provide 5-day-a-week Medicare coverage to increase the revenue and improve the star rating. With this new therapy team that we have hired and brought into the building, they are able to provide the 5-day-a-week Medicare coverage, and we have been able to increase the revenue because of them. We have developed a monthly report on this, and we can actually see the therapy revenue going up in this building versus what it was previously. And also our Medicare a Med A rate with therapy is a lot longer period than it is on most standards on the mainland with other skilled nursing facilities. We have some that's ranging 55 days. On the mainland's more of a 22 to 23 day average. Initiative 2, we're working with the Nantucket Community School in Upper Cape Tech to continue to provide CNA to get to bring more of them into the facility. Initiative 3, improve the resident outing experiences. I mean, I know everybody knows that we really put in an effort into the activities section of this facility. I mean, we have the wheelers, we have the van rides. I mean, in the town of the whaling museums. I mean, just this past Christmas, the stroll and everything. We do put a lot of effort into the activities, and the family members really appreciate it. Initiative 4, we continue developing plans for our new island home. That's continued by staff meetings that we'll have on the side here. Also, we have the staff designer coming in next week for 2 meetings. And Bob from ENF, he is really spearheading that part of the Initiative 4. On Initiative 5, we have recently contracted with an on-site physician to provide recommendations and continuum care to improve the star rating and to improve the revenue. Just this one thing we did alone recently, we brought on Anna Espiritu to be in the building on the floor doing rounds. And already we can see, we just had a cooperating meeting today. We can see the use of therapeutics and other meds going down. We're actually seeing a lot more improvement in quality care just by having a constant physician in-house. And really her salary is coming from their company billing directly to Mass Health and to Medicare. Initiative 6, we have contracted with a nurse practitioner specialized in behavioral and mental health to improve their patient care. Because we have such a severe problem of this issue on the island overall, Bob has taken it upon himself. He brought in a nurse practitioner who specializes in this area, and it has been a godsend. Okay, on number 7, we improved documentation and clinical systems to increase the revenue, which has happened, and the reimbursements have been increasing. Initiative 8, we have increased the cash flow and an improvement in accounts receivables outstanding. You can see that we used to have a ton of outstanding Medicaid pending. Now we got 0 on the books. That's outstanding. That's all because of the systems that we have brought into the building. The current year that was the current year's accomplishments. The challenges. Massachusetts, they're finally changing over from the management minutes questionnaire called MMQ. That was supposed to be brought to rest years ago, but now we're falling onto the MDS. We're going from the minimum data assessments to determine the rate of reimbursement to us. That went into effect on October. Already, we can see our Medicaid rates have increased due to this new assessment as listed above. Also, at this reporting, at this time, we have not received the certified public expenditures from the state, and it is not known if or when these funds might be received. Also, COVID continues to increase the need for additional infection control and education and training to adhere to DPH and CMS regulations. We just had, not too long ago, DPH infection control team come in and came into the facility before our most recent COVID outbreak. They were kind of pleased. They did have some recommendations, which we are following. And we just went through, as everybody knows, we just had a severe COVID outbreak, and we're now on the other side of the fence on that. We're clear, both staff and resident-wise. The accomplishments, the facility has increased the daily census to an average of 39 residents daily. That improvements from last year's average of 37 residents. Overall, resident revenue has shown a steady increase year over year from fiscal 22 to 23 and 24, and projected to continue in fiscal year 25. Also, nursing staff is receiving additional training. We just had IV training at the beginning of 2023, and we actually set an IV medications alliance this week. That's pretty big for us. Moving on, we got the fiscal year 2024 approved budget versus what we got in what the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget is. We're looking for 10.6 versus the 9.5 that we had for fiscal year 2024. Then we're moving on to the payroll expense. Last year was 6.7. Now we're increasing like 7.6. That goes to 14.6%. Operating, we moved from we're going up 1.7% to 49K. In our Island Home budget detailed actuals, we moved down to that. You can just look at that. From 2021, it was actual of 5.8. 22 was 5.7. The 23 was 5.4, and the 2024 budget was 6.7. Okay, and we're looking at 7.6, but we're also looking at an increase in revenue of what we're seeing to compensate for that. Going down.
Question, while we're
Go
on
ahead.
the screen, can I have a quick question, Don?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, to get a true salary and wages, do we have to add the salary and wages with the professional services?
No, Brian and Bob are working on that. They're putting it into a separate bucket. We're actually taking, we're actually decreasing professional services. A lot of it's going to be coming in-house, like Michelle Monroe and crew. We actually put in that, that's coming back in-house in that area. Did I answer that correctly?
Well, sort of. I'm just saying, if I wanted to look at because professional services is traveling nurses and other staff, correct?
Right, and we're trying to
All right,
reduce
so
it.
to get a true, so I'd have to add salaries and wages to professional services to have an idea what our labor percent was for 21 to compare that to 25, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we're looking at our Island Home revenue budget. So far, we did 9.5 for 2024. That's what we're looking at, and we're proposing to increase that revenue to 10.6. But if you look at the actuals, right, we're finishing off fiscal year 2023, the actual. We went from 2022 of 8.6, and we actually increased it with the systems of 11.3. That's up 32%, I would say. And then we're projecting to increase it again to 10.6. That's all I have to say on that. Any questions? I'd be glad to take.
Any questions from anyone?
I mean, our main goal is to get more systematic and bring more of the payroll in-house. We are looking at the housing issue, but hopefully we'll satisfy that. And then, but I'm really pleased what we have accomplished with the systems we have brought in place.
Yeah. And as we look at the idea of a new facility, I know that we're talking about whether it's a housing component or the availability of housing in one of the other locations that we're working on.
Right. And for me, looking outside in, I'm just part of the team here. I'm not the main focus. I mean, what we've done, not the building itself. I'm looking at, I came in here to 2022 and look at what we started off with and what we did with the systems we put in place in 2023 and we continue to put in place. I mean, the systems and the discipline that EFA's brought into this building, that's amazing. I've never seen that in any of my other facilities. That's all I gotta say. I'm just outside. I'm just part of the team. So I'm just saying what I see.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shall we go to the next one? Sewer and stormwater.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. We'll start off with the sewer. Overall, we can tend to still be within our mission scope, which is important for what we do and how we do it. We have had some challenges this year and a lot of projects going on, so we're still moving ahead on a lot of that. Currently we have we're low staffing, as most departments are, but we're working through it. Some of our goals, as we go down through, one of the biggest things we want to do is try to create a department strategic plan that's going to include the 3 department divisions that we have, with operations, collections, and construction. I think even with us being able to create this plan is going to be a huge bonus for us in the future, by being able to have more staff be cross-trained in multiple tasks for running, example, Sconset treatment plant or the Surfside plant, running the collections crew with the specialized equipment. That's one thing that we are seeing now, and it's especially a feeling is we currently have multiple operators here that can run the Sconset plant if the operator that's out there all the time is on vacation or sick. We have operators here that can run the Surfside plant if the chief is out or the primary operations guy, and then our construction crew guys that do the emergency repairs or whatever we find out in the streets they can work on either sanitary sewer, stormwater. We assist other departments as needed, so that's going to be a big key going forward with us. That seems to work very well in our planning. Goal 2 is to continue working very closely with all the other departments and island organizations. This has become very beneficial for us, working with some of the outside groups as well as all the inside departments. So we're going to continue with that. Our goal 3 is new this year for us, with the creation of now the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, and we have hired a full-time stormwater manager. Charles Johnson had come over he was our engineer for the sewer department. He has assumed that position as stormwater manager and has already hit the ground running. One of the big things that we're working on, and we're going to be bringing in a consultant to help us, is the stormwater regulations, to be able to somewhat look similar to what we did for the sanitary sewer regulations. That's going to allow us to come up with a fee schedule for a large subdivision or whatever that wants to connect, being able to have them commit funds or do all the work. One of the big things that's going on is Mass DEP and EPA requirements. They're changing, and they're changing quite rapidly. So that's one of the things that Charles and myself are going to be focusing on a lot. He's going to take the lead on all the stormwater issues. I'll be there to support him, and he's going to be there to support me as well as on sanitary stuff. Goal 4, which has become a big item for multiple departments, is to continue to examine and evaluate technologies that are available for the destruction and reduction of PFAS waste streams entering the landfill and, from the sewer systems, septic haulers, carpet cleaners, and everything like that. We're looking at everything in a broad scope of how we can not only take care of what we have here for issues, but all the other departments. So PFAS is becoming an even bigger issue as we go along. So we will keep you up to date on what's going on there. Our initiatives as we move along, Initiative 1, which has come to the forefront, still to examine coastal resiliency measures for the protection of our facilities across the island. Also, with that, a lot of the flooding that we're seeing downtown is we're seeing some impacts into the sanitary system, which is not uncommon for large flooding events. So the working with Vince and his team and the knowledge that they have is extremely helpful to us working forward with this coastal resiliency. We're going to continue with our repairs, replacements of all the pipeline projects. The third force main project's well underway, and we're going along. We found a few surprises here and there with old stuff in the road. Our Initiative 3, we're going to continue our collaboration against all the departments: water, health, solid waste, and one of the big ones we're trying to do is we're working very closely with HR to create some, whether it's going to be a small video or something to not only for this department but for the town in general, to maybe show what we do in a presentation to the public. It's not that we're covered with wastewater every day, or this, just to show different aspects of what we do in general, what other departments do in general, to try to get it out to the public and maybe get some interest out there. That's been tough for us lately, but we're hoping to really work on that together, and we're working with Florencia and Amanda and everyone right now. So that's pretty exciting to see how that comes out. Some of our accomplishments here over the last year, it's been a busy year. The Surfside Road area sewer project, all the major infrastructure has been completed. All the main lines are in the ground. The pump stations are all online. The big thing that's left, and we're working very closely with DPW and the transportation office for the reconstruction of the road itself. There's some improvements and everything that's going on with the bike path as part of Safe Streets initiative that Mike's working on with DOT, and some very, very important crosswalk improvements. And one of those, which is really important, is there's one currently right near the entrance to the high school going in. That one is going to move, and it's going to move down closer to the center of the school. It's a big safety concern. We've really called that out in this project, and to improve that. The crossing, everything, working with all these other departments is really important. So we're hoping that the final pavement stuff will all be done come the fall of 2024, pending we can get all the other paving done that either DPW has or other town projects. So stormwater manager was hired, as I already talked about. We're currently working through CMOM program for the stormwater, similar to what we did for the sewer. Trying to get that all into our GIS system, updated. We had a new centrifuge installed last year for dewatering and staff training, which has really increased our efficiency in dewatering operations. No longer are we having to work dewatering for 12, 14, 16 hours a day. We're actually able to take and fill a truck. Normally from 7 to 2 in the morning, the truck's full, and we're off to the landfill every day with a truck. That's been a very big help in our operations. And again, just to talk more about the PFAS and PFOA, we just completed year 1 of our testing to give Nantucket a baseline. And so now that gives us a roadmap to further determine where and how these contaminants are entering our waste streams and how they're being transported to the facility. So, and we tested everything that enters the plant. I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions on those before I get into the budget.
Anyone? Nope. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Getting into the budget, the operating, we had an increase, overall budget increase of, it's looking about 7.32% between 24 and 25. And some of the numbers that are leading to that the $952,000 increases are some of our debt service has gone up about 7.5%. Operating costs had gone up a little over 6%. And this again, and other departments are all seeing it. And we just heard about some of this through the last presenter that we had is materials and construction costs are really through the roof. So that's where a lot of our increases are coming from. And debt service was a big one. We have a lot of debt. We have a lot of big projects too. So as I drill down into some of it, I won't go too long on it unless anyone has any very specific questions. I could go line by line, but I found in the past that if anyone had any specific questions, seems to be easier to just go in there that way.
I would agree. Does anyone have anything specific? No, I think it's well laid out.
Okay. Our revenue was also increased somewhat when we're finding, I issued 25 permits on Tuesday, and I just did another 11 tonight before I got on. So we're not seeing much of a decrease at all in any of the permitting practices. What we're seeing a lot of moving houses around, a lot of move-offs, move-ons, a lot of modifications to existing properties and additions. You still have your group of people coming in for the new stuff, but a lot of this is additions, modifications, et cetera, like that. So we still seem to be seeing a pretty steady inflow of permits, over 30 something again this week alone. It's pretty impressive for this time of year. So I'm not seeing much of a slowdown there at this time. So and down the bottom, and then we get into some of our exceptions. Again, I could go through all of these line by line, but I'll leave that there for in case anyone has any specific questions. I don't want to keep everyone here all night. So
Any questions? Any comments? Nope. Thank you,
Okay.
Dave.
And just shows you our workforce down at the bottom there. And if anyone else has any specific questions or whatever, I'm open for questions, and or if anyone that needs to come out and visit at any time, we're always here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I think our last one is the water company.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hi, Mark.
So the mission's always the same for us, right? Description's gonna stay the same. Just gotta provide safe drinking water is the main goal. Goals almost stayed the same goals as last year. Those were multi-project goals, multi-project and multi-year goals. Just some updates on some of those. Number 2, the meter reading equipment, we've now finally moved everything to a cloud-based, help with a cloud-based server. The new hardware is installed at the tanks. We're working with a company to finalize some of the e-billing that's going to take place to make that better for the customer, so it's more interactive for the customer. Log in and check out some data that they need to check out if they want to. That should be finalized in the next few months. Obviously, the sewer force main project, we're working really well with David on that project, changing out water where water's bad, changing out lead services as we go for the ones that are remaining, so that's ongoing. I still kept the goal for renewable energy. I know the larger project has kind of been hit a roadblock with the Article 97 with the land title, but we've met with some people and working with Lauren. We have a lot of roof space here at the office and the shop and our pump stations. We really think it's important that we take a closer look at that continuing into this budget year. The commission is committed to getting some solar power to help us offset some of these electrical costs. Obviously, our initiatives go in line with those projects. And as always, I just to look at accomplishments, keeping the staff safe, keeping a good work environment, and supplying great customer service and quality water to the customers and residents of the island. So this year's budget is almost like if, you know, the movie Groundhog Day, it's almost the same as last year. You know, David had mentioned and others had mentioned inventory prices. We kind of predicted this. We all knew this was going to happen through inflation and through the supply and demand chain. Prices kind of skyrocketed for us. Every piece and part that we buy went way up. Supply chain's a lot better now, but the prices are not going to come down. I've been told by a lot of our suppliers and a lot of the manufacturers that's going to be the cost of business from here moving forward. So the budgets are really close to what it was a few previous years. And down to operating, everything is pretty much the same. Big difference in some of the line items. Professional services, I've bumped up a little bit. You guys all know about our groundwater model. With all the PFAS and the different contamination issues that we have going on the island, I've been working with our modeling contractor. We're going to develop a model that does a fate and transport, so we'll be able to put in a location of contamination, say a PFAS issue, put that in the model, turn on the pumps, run our groundwater model, and it can help us predict where it's going to go. Help us predict if we're going to move it by pumping certain pumps into the water distribution system. That was one of the main increases in that. The rest of it pretty much stayed the same. A little bit of additional money for, as I mentioned before, the e-billing portion for customer service. But everything else in the budget is pretty identical. You know, 50 to 60,000 off from last year to this year. I was going to put a higher revenue for water sales because we did put about 130, 140 new connections in last year. And this is not a panic comment. This is not saying this is going to happen, but many of you know we're currently listed as a, you know, drought 2 condition. There's 4 levels of drought. Nantucket and the Vineyard are in what's called level 2.
I know we've got a lot of rain in the last 2 weeks. We'll see what they say in another month or so. If that continues into the spring season, if we stay dry, kind of put a conservative number in there for water sales, the water that we sell through the meter. I might have to, if we stay in a 2 or a 3, I would have to put in some type of restriction. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying at the time when I did this budget, I had to plan for that and be conservative on that number. Other than that, it's pretty close to what it has been for the last year or two. That's really pretty much it. Staff-wise, we're good. We're going to add a customer service rep, another admin staff here in a few weeks. Other than that, and that's not filling a position that was lost, that's just adding a person. As we add 130, 140 customers every year, that's more customers we got to take care of, so we need some more help to make sure we maintain that customer service. Other than that, I don't think that this year is going to be that much different than the one we just had.
Any questions, comments? Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
And David Gray wanted to mention one more thing that's exciting.
Thank you, Don. Just Mark mentioned the solar, and I forgot to mention it. We are seeing roughly a 25,000 to 32,000 kilowatt hour savings over the last few months since the municipal solar system was installed. That's pretty impressive, and it leads us to wanting to possibly install some more. But I just wanted to get that out there, that this solar that was installed here is pretty much making a pretty good impact so far. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that's it on that, Libby.
Yep.
Last, we have select boards reports and comments, review and discussion and potential adoption of the May 7th annual town meeting and the election warrant. It seems that this may be ready for adoption.
Well, let's hope so. I would like to take you through what's changed or been updated since last week. And Erica, I think is going to put something on your screen, and I have something on my screen, which hopefully more or less matches. Okay, so Erica, can you just go to the very beginning of it, to Article 1? I just want to start at the beginning. All right, so just to take you through anything that's changed. So we're still waiting on what is going to happen with select board compensation. That's Article 7, sorry. Right there. Article 11. So this article underwent a little bit of a change. If you recall, last week we had the number, the amount, purchase amount in this article, but that isn't really how it works. So that's been revised and taken out, and the debt exclusion contingency language put in. And if you recall, last week we had a little bit of a discussion about the order of debt exclusions, and maybe this might be a good time to review another request from last week, which was to look at what the tax rate impacts are estimated at for all of these debt exclusions. Erica, if you could show what Brian prepared earlier today. This is going to be a little, yeah, okay, a little hard to read, I was going to say. So Brian, I think, can explain any particular issues here, but just to take you through, these are the proposed debt exclusions, and there's one capital exclusion that are warrant articles, and they are ballot questions. So the first one is a capital exclusion for several capital items. That capital exclusions are 1-year increases in the tax rate. And for the first, and so these numbers are based on the average year-round property of a little over $2,012,976. With the residential exemption, that tax bill would increase by approximately $141.52 for 1 year. And then if you go down this sheet, item 2, DPW facility design supplemental, the tax bill would go up $2.88. And so this gets a little bit tricky to explain, but these increases would not hit anybody's tax bill until the funds are borrowed, and they're not all borrowed at the same time or in the same year. And there's a conservative interest rate that's being used here to calculate these numbers of, I think, Brian, you said 4% earlier. And so I guess
calculations were calculated at 4% using a 20-year amortization.
Thank you, Brian. And is it accurate to say that if we pretended for a moment that all of these things were going to hit the tax bill in 1 year, in the first year of the borrowing, the tax bill with that average year-round valuation with the residential exemption would go up $204.32, but it would go down the following year by $141 because that capital exclusion is just 1 year. You follow? But
correct.
again, it's not misleading, but it's not likely that these borrowings will all occur in the same year. Do you want to add anything, Brian?
No, I think you covered it, Libby. It's highly improbable that these borrowings would all be permanently borrowed in the first year. Most of these would be borrowed as they got close to the end of the projects, which would probably be a year or two from the date of approval at annual town meeting. So the likelihood of these all being on there is very remote.
And potentially even more than that. Like we probably
Correct.
still have debt exclusions that have been approved over 3 or 4 years ago that we haven't borrowed for yet.
Correct. And the most likely one in this list, to members of the select board, would be the 31 Western Ave. If that were successful and we were to acquire the property, then we would most likely permanently borrow that if the rates made sense at that time, because the project would be completed. But that, in all likelihood, is the only one that would be permanently borrowed, if any were, in fiscal 25.
Brian, just jumping on quickly to 31 Western Ave. Brian and I had a quick chat by email earlier today, so we haven't even totally talked about this in full yet, but there is a balance in our sale of real estate account, and Brian can explain what those funds can be used for. They do require an appropriation at town meeting. There's $2.something million in there right now. So we were mulling over, we could potentially appropriate, say, $1 million to offset the 6 million. And so we wouldn't have to borrow 6, we could borrow maybe 5, and perhaps use the balance at a later time to be appropriated by town meeting for the necessary repairs, upgrades, and other potential expenses for this 31 Western property, if it's approved by town meeting and the ballot. Is that accurate, Brian?
That's accurate, yes. We can use the sale of real estate to fund any particular project that we could lawfully borrow for a period of 5 years or more. So the purchase of this would fall into that category, in my opinion, or the repairs also would fall into that category, in my opinion.
So I don't know if the board has thoughts at the moment, unless you want to come back to this, of the order of these articles. Well, let's go through them and we can remember what they are. Okay, so there's 31 Western, right? So the order right now is, as shown here, Article 12 would be a supplemental appropriation for Public Works facility design and improvements of design. Newtown Road Transportation Supplemental, Town Employee Housing Feasibility Costs, Tom Nevers Park Debris Removal and Erosion Control, and Dune Restoration, reconstruction of the Jetty Speeds Tennis Courts, trying again for the Public Safety Auxiliary Building, expansion of landfill cell 3B. So there's a little note there. We realized inadvertently after last week's meeting that this article wasn't in the warrant yet, so it is now in. And then that's the end of the debt exclusions. So if you're good with the order, I can move on, but I don't. Didn't know.
And want the order changed?
Well, I just worry, I was thinking about this last week and I was putting an order together in my head in terms of there's a couple of criteria when I think about hierarchy on these. There's critical need. There's finishing out projects that have been partially funded and need supplemental funding so we can move them along and complete them because there's approved funding for like Newtown Road that's hanging out there. And obviously the Tom Nevers debris situation has come to everyone's attention since the storms. And for me, you know, without a doubt, planning for town employee housing has to be our number one priority. And it feels like we might want to put that first if we talk about housing as being our number one priority. Presuming that, I mean, if the logic is those that come first, if there's fatigue, the ones that come later in the discussion, we might want to consider as a lower priority. Or in this hierarchy, thinking hierarchically, sorry, a mouthful.
So you want Article 14 to come after Article 11? Is that what you're saying?
I was more throwing it out as a concept. I don't know whether we talked about this, you know, there was some hint last week about do we continue to include everything or reorder them in some level of priority. I'm not asking for anything specific. I guess I'm just commenting and wondering if any other the board members have any thoughts.
Matt?
Yeah, I think I could agree with moving that to the front. I sort of brought some of this up because I do think, you know, when we say, oh, it's $200 if everything comes in at once, that's fine if you've got an average house with a residential exemption. But there's a lot of people who, you know, who are operating businesses and other things, or they're getting the taxes passed through to them on commercial properties, et cetera, that it's more substantial than that. It's not just $200. So that's why I believe things like the police station, you know, don't pass. And so I wonder, you know, the two that I would put at the end would probably be the tennis courts and the police station, my own opinion, you know, and I could see leaving them on and see, but those are the lower priority for me.
I mean, for me, I'm not overly concerned. These are all really early. And I think that, you know, people will have their opinions on which ones they want to support, don't, but Libby, go ahead.
I was just going to try to summarize. So maybe move the Article 14 to be either before or after Article 11 and put the tennis courts and the tennis courts, okay, the tennis courts and the public safety auxiliary building after Article 18, which is expansion of the landfill. So
that's fine with me. Does everyone else okay with that?
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, but I think that change is fine.
Fine. Whatever you want.
Okay.
All right, I'm just making a note to myself. Okay. So that is those. 19, 20, 21, 20, let's see, 20, just moving through here. Zoning is Articles 38 to, I think, 55-ish. And those, I think, are all set, not 55, 59. Yeah, so zoning ends at 59 and 60 right now is the new article that you all discussed last week with town council, general bylaw amendment for short-term rentals. And the suggestion on placement with this was to put this so that what we try to do is keep the zoning, in a clump and then go into the general bylaws. So this one is right after a citizen article, but it isn't it's the short-term rental citizen zoning article, Article 59. So your new general bylaw amendment, as you discussed last week, is here. And then that is followed by the 2 citizen short-term rental general bylaw amendments. There was a little bit of a discussion earlier today about, Erica, just, yeah, okay, stay on 60 for now. There's a little bit of discussion today about whether or not the select board's article, which is a general bylaw amendment, should go before the Cohen short-term rental zoning bylaw amendment. And I really have no idea if that is, I don't know, up to you all.
I'm not sure that I want to put this article through. I think for a few different reasons, but before we get it, and I think we should discuss, what it would do and how it would do it, and and sort of if we even are going to put it through. I do believe, but before we get there, does the Board of Health or the town staff or anyone have any recommendations one way or the other on this?
As far as specifically what, Matt?
Well, does staff think this is a good idea? Is this, does this make sense? Is it enforceable? Any staff perspective on this?
Well, I haven't even reviewed this with any staff. I don't know if anybody else has. There's been really no time to do that. I think that staff would probably, I really don't know what staff would be reviewing this other than possibly the health department, but this, I don't know that this is all that seriously different from the current regulations that are under the health department to enforce. I don't know, John, if you have any thoughts about that? Through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Libby. I think that there's been quite a discussion, and I believe there was quite a bit of staff input when we went around on this last year. So I'm not sure that with the possible exception of planning and land use that we're going to get much from staff. As you know, there are 3 things in this bylaw: a limit of 2 rentals, short-term rentals by any one operator, a prohibition on corporate ownership with a grandfathering provision, and lastly is the prohibition of short-term rentals in interval ownership units. So, this was something that was discussed last week as something the board wanted to at least think about over the week and take a look at it. And so here it is. There really hasn't been, as Libby said, time to do any real review of this with staff.
Yeah, this is Malcolm. I'm not sure how to get myself on when this is on the screen, but the Board of Health has not discussed this, and I know I asked Roberto for comments, but I just did that, so he hasn't had any time. So this appears, this one and Mr. Kopko's look on the surface a little easier to enforce than what we had last year, but I'm not sure. So we don't have an official Board of Health or Health Department comment.
Okay. I'm going to vote on the warrant, but I'm not going to specifically vote on whether to include this article. So if you guys want to dig deeper into that, I'm going to let Brooke chair that part.
Yeah.
You guys want to
Okay.
have a discussion now? I'm going to turn my camera off and not be part of it.
Okay. Thanks, Don. So thoughts on, well, perhaps I'd ask the general question, do we feel like we're ready to submit anything before we discuss the specifics of what's being presented? Do we feel comfortable even including anything given questions? Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
I think
Tom?
where I'm at on this is it doesn't sound like we, the four of us, what have you, are at a point where we can reasonably feel comfortable putting this on without more discussion. I may be wrong about that. But I'm also a little concerned that if one of the citizen warrant articles passes and it may have unintended consequences or difference between general and zoning, et cetera. And then we're kind of left with that, and we may have to either scramble for a special town meeting or not. And then we may be left with that, and also what's going on with the court cases. So I'm afraid we may be short on time, but also concerned about unintended consequences.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Again, I'm not sure how I raised my hand with this on the screen.
Okay, go ahead, Malcolm, and then you, Matt.
Oh. Well, if you look at the potential select board article, it's not all that different from the citizens articles. Essentially, the big point is you're allowed to have 2 rentals, and that's said elsewhere. This article has the timeshare clause, but it's not that different. So I'm not sure we're adding anything that's not already going to be before the town.
Matt, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think there is, there are some differences. The Kopko's article doesn't have grandfathering in it. So that's, one large difference between these two. And I'm not arguing for that one way or the other. I think there's the other thing that's sort of unclear in sort of both of them to me, which wasn't unclear in the short-term rental group article, was is this like 2 houses on one lot, or could you have a rental on one and a rental on another? And then there's issues like, could my wife have 2 and, on 2 different lots, and my son and my, granddaughter? I sort of, there's loopholes. And I think what I was thinking about it today is we're in a situation where we're trying to, we'd like to figure out something to do with use, but we're doing it through kind of ownership, which I think has a lot of loopholes in it. So, and the other issue is there's that the short-term rental group, I think, had right, was they exempted cottages and they exempted hosted stays and they defined hosted stays. And I don't believe that this has that in there. So, I think, I think what Mr. Kopko was trying to do was like define natural persons and get something started, which, but what we're trying to do, we're trying to do a bit more than that in this, and I'm not quite sure I'm there yet.
John, Giorgio?
Thank you, Brooke. So, if you recall last week, the direction I received was to basically produce a version of the Provincetown bylaw for Nantucket, and that's what I did. So what you're looking at in Article 60 is basically what was passed in Provincetown. There are a few differences, but that's basically what it does. I know from emails that I've seen from Attorney Cohen, and I don't mean to speak for him, but I think based upon the emails I read, he's not in favor of the limitation on 2 units per person. So we may wind up with dueling citizen articles here. I think it would be ideal if this was put on the warrant, but that's up to you. It might be behoove the town to engage in a discussion with both Mr. Kopko and Attorney Cohen to see if there isn't somewhere where the 3 groups could agree. And then, Matt, at your suggestion, I did put language in Article 60 at the beginning to allow for further amendments based upon what I call the current state of the law. So I will tell you that the Provincetown bylaw is still under review by the Attorney General, and it will be for at least another 45 days. So I was hoping we'd have something definitive before you had to close the warrant, but that's not the case. So I guess the question is, do you want to be able to sit down and come to an agreement, if you can, with the 2 petitioners, and use Article 60 as a vehicle to do that, and then pass over the other 2? Because I do share the concern that we may wind up on town meeting floor potentially passing more than one of these articles that are not internally consistent, and that could create a problem for enforcement as well as Attorney General review.
Anybody have any thoughts before I share mine?
I worry that we won't have time. This is complicated, and look, I was in the middle of a lot of it last year trying to figure it out. This is, I worry that we won't have time again to review. We come to Wednesday nights, it's not the time to do this, and I feel like that's what worries me. And I agree with John. It'd be great if we could get, Cohen and Kopko to agree. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Maybe I'd be surprised, because they're coming at it from really 2 different areas, and 2 different perspectives is the word. And so I don't know. I'm glad we saw it. I wish we'd seen it a month ago, but I'm glad we've got it now. But I'm not there yet.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I'll repeat what I said last week. I think we should have dealt with this a long time ago, because now we're rushing around trying to deal with it. And the issue of grandfathering, depending on which lawyer you talk to, we need it or we don't need it. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even going to go there. And Matt said people would cheat on this. That was in other areas where they've limited the number of rentals, people have got around it, but we have to do something. We have to take a step forward. And because we're always going to find fault with whatever we propose. I obviously was very vocal about the working group. I could find fault with the 2 citizens articles. I could find fault with this. So we're going to have to take a step forward sometime, and maybe John's suggestion is the best. I have to give you a minute to think about it.
John?
So the other alternative that the select board has, if you don't want to leave this on the warrant and use it as a vehicle to try to come to a consensus, the select board could take a hard look at both of the petitioned articles. And if you want to take a step, you could always recommend one of those articles with amendments. Like, for example, if you want to do just the ban on corporate ownership as a first step, probably the best vehicle to do that would be Mr. Cohen's article. It includes grandfathering. If you want to be more expansive, you could recommend Mr. Kopko's article. But I recognize no matter what the select board does here, these are all on the warrant, and we don't really know what's going to happen at town meeting, how it will play out. But you can always, a month from now or 2 months from now, ask the finance committee to pass over the article, to take no action. That is the select board's article.
So I'm going to throw in my 2 cents, and it's worth about that. I'm much less comfortable with the number of units owned. I think it's way more complicated in application than is presented in this language. And so I would exclude that portion if we were to move this forward. Because I think we're going to get a lot more information on ownership and usage and operation through the existing bylaw and the registration process. So we will have more detailed information to analyze the impact of that kind of thing and who gets impacted and so forth. And then, but I do think that there is general consensus in the community around reining in corporate ownership, and doing so now with a grandfathering clause to hopefully minimize the risk of a lawsuit or a fight on it. At least we started somewhere. We're saying it stops here and doesn't go forward, right? That, I believe there was really good consensus in the community. So for me, that's a really good place to start. And then I also think the fractional ownership piece makes sense as well. And I think we should have these things written by town council, so that when we go to town meeting, if we agree that these are shared goals enough to put them on the warrant, that there is a version that has been crafted by town council rather than by a citizen article. So we can make that argument on the floor of town meeting. And then I think that there is room to talk to the proponents of the other articles to see if what I'm suggesting is a reasonable starting point for them. A step one. Malcolm?
Well, Madam Vice Chair, that may be step one, but boy, it's a small step. I mean, I'm more pessimistic than you are that we're going to have data that we can really make decisions about for a long time. We're starting a new system. Some of the staff that are responsible for it are concerned they won't get everything we're looking for. Corporate ownership, yes, everyone ban the corporations, but that's really a relatively small number. So what we're going to prevent is the growth, period. And timeshare, fine. So maybe that's where we have to go, but it's I don't even think it's the first step. It's a baby step. It's not going to do much. I don't know. Be interesting what the discussion continues. I haven't quite got to what I'm going to vote for or recommend yet.
Madam Chair,
Tom,
I tend to agree. Provision K, the 2 licenses or more, may be too complicated with the other stuff. And kind of somebody may have said baby steps before, or the bare minimum, or however we're going to think about this. But I think after taking a look at this for a while in the STRWG and then in this process, that maybe just starting small with the corporate, the fractional position provisions, and the definitional provisions, and taking out K, or may be a good start for us. And then, as town council said before, if we're not happy with it in a while, in a month or so, maybe asking FinCom to make a negative motion on it. But at least we'll have it on the warrant as a placeholder to either work with the 2 citizens petitioners and or to put our full stamp of approval on it. Or advocacy, I mean.
Yeah, it's Matt again, Brooke. This is gonna, and because we've got the question of a Y in the use chart on this town meeting again, this is we're entering another, it's gonna be another contentious town meeting, with half the populace, give or take, adamantly just, in disagreement with that. And so I'm trying to think of how that will play out with these 3, 2 articles that are already on, and potentially a 3rd article, how that will all play out again. I think it's going to play out very similar to how it's played out the last couple times. So I'm a little, anyway.
John?
Yes, obviously, Matt, we have no control over that happening at town meeting, because that's not the zoning article is not ours. And so that's going to play out and be contentious at town meeting, I think, whether or not you put this article on or not. Obviously we don't have the linkage anymore. So that is different. It would be relatively simple to, delete subsection K if there's general consensus on the corporate ownership and the fractional ownership piece, but just take out the limit of 2. Because I do tend to agree that, in Provincetown, they put that limit of 2 in a separate article because they anticipated there'd be a lot of pushback, and the pushback never materialized at town meeting.
Matt?
Is there a way, John, to write I'm just thinking about it now, is there a way to write an accessory use zoning article? And give people something to vote for? We're gonna do the last minute. Should we do that at the last minute too?
Well, you know how I feel about the accessory use issue, and I think you heard loud and clear from Judy Barrett similar concerns. So I'm not going to weigh in on that one. That's a policy question. If that's what you want, if that's what the board wants, we can put it together and you can refer that to the planning board. But I don't believe that was the planning board's recommendation on the zoning article last fall.
I think the best chance we have to take a baby step or a first step is the 2 things that people generally agree on. limiting the future growth of corporate. There are people who would like to make them go away altogether. I'm not sure that's a wise, my understanding is that's probably legally not a wise direction to go. But I think what we're doing is we're saying we heard, for me, I heard that these two things are generally agreeable to the community. Let's start there. Let the rest of it that's in the citizen warrant articles just it's going to get duked out again and likely go down in flames again. Because there's such strong support and lack of support at the outside edges for that on the zoning, and I am definitely not prepared to present an alternative zoning article, not in the timeline we have, not even close. For me, I wouldn't support that. So, Malcolm, did you have your hand up again?
No, I was just going to repeat myself because the zoning article that's proposed in the citizens warrant has been proposed 3 times, and it's just going to have the same outcome, I believe. I would like to go with Matt and work on the accessory use, but I don't see a big support on that here.
No, it's for me, it's more, it's moving into new territory at the 11th hour. I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, maybe we need to move into new territory. Unfortunately, it's the 11th hour, but obviously we're just going around in circles on this whole issue. As I said before, whatever we propose, someone else is going to propose something else. So,
okay, so where we're at, is there any right now? It's on the warrant. Does anyone want to make a motion regarding what is written today, right now in the draft warrant before we vote, decide whether to vote the entire warrant? Does anyone want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to remove it from the warrant
In its entirety.
in its entirety.
Okay. Does that have a second?
And my rationale is that this is last minute and we haven't thought through the, unintended consequences or the intended consequences, and it hasn't been adequately vetted, so I can't support it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a second to Matt's motion? So, John, procedurally, what happens? The motion dies?
no, I'll second that.
Okay.
I don't want to, I will second it.
Okay. So we now have a motion on the floor to remove it in its entirety. Any discussion on that? Okay, to a roll call vote, Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Tom?
No.
And I'm going to vote no. Where does that leave us with a 2-2 split, John?
It does, the motion does not prevail. The motion to remove it.
Okay. So,
can I have a point of clarification?
Yep.
Have we asked for to look at this, but we didn't vote to put this on. So, it's sort of a little, we said, hey,
Gotcha.
we'd like to look at it. So we haven't even adopted it. If we go to adopt it, we'll lose 2-2 the other way.
We are in uncharted territory, Matt.
Madam Chair?
Again, Tom?
I don't mean to make this convoluted, but I was kind of hoping that I or one of us could make a motion to approve this article with K taken out first.
Right.
Well, you could move to amend Matt's motion. And if that prevails, then you would vote on keeping it in the warrant. So you could make a motion to amend Matt's motion by deleting subsection K, but leaving it on the warrant.
Is that a new motion, John, since we
No,
voted
it's
on
an
the other one?
amendment. It's an amendment to the previous motion.
Okay.
Couldn't they just make a new motion?
Yes, except for the uncharted territory issue that Matt points out. So I would prefer if Tom wants to make that motion, it's not a new motion, but it amends Matt's prior motion.
And
Madam Chair, that would,
is the 2 dwelling units. right?
Yes,
Just to clarify.
yes, yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
It's
so
a-
John,
it's
would
a
you
motion to-
restate it?
Yes, so Tom is making a motion to amend Matt's motion, which is to delete it from the warrant altogether. Tom's amendment would leave it on the warrant, but delete subsection K, which is the limit of 2 units per owner.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, before I would just add a quick comment, which is the primary reason for myself making this motion is to have something that's on there that's written by town council and that's been vetted. So we know what the language is, so it isn't in conflict with any potential conflicts. That's the primary reason I'm making this motion.
Okay.
and Madam Chair, you still have, the voters still have the option of limiting it to 2 in Mr. Kopko's article. So I will second that.
Okay. Okay. So I now have a second, and this is.
A
I'm a little
motion,
confused about how it's a motion to amend Matt's motion, which is
And
to do
leave,
the opposite,
and
really,
leave the article
right?
on the warrant, but to delete subsection K.
yeah, so if that amendment gets 3 votes, then you can simply vote to include Article 60 as amended.
Okay. Okay. So anybody want to comment before I take the roll call? Okay. So by roll call, Matt,
No.
Malcolm,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So we
So
now have an amended Article 60.
You have an amended main motion, which is to keep Article 60 on the warrant, but delete subsection K.
Okay, so now we're voting on the substance of the motion. So by roll call again, Matt,
On including this article?
without K.
No.
Tom,
Aye.
Malcolm,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Okay. So now,
And I'm sorry, what was that motion and who made it and seconded?
Erica,
so it was made by,
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brooke. Or do you want me to explain it?
please do.
So that motion, Erica, was to include Article 60 on the warrant, but delete subsection K. And I believe, Tom, you made that motion?
Oh, yeah, but I thought that they already voted on it.
No, they only voted to amend Matt's motion.
Oh, and now they're voting to actually vote on the article.
Yes, as amended.
Yeah, so it's Matt's motion as amended, which is the opposite of what he moved. It's kind of the opposite of what he moved, but by amendment, it was changed.
Okay, so who made that last motion?
Well, no, it was the original motion. Matt made it and Malcolm seconded it, which is a tad confusing.
Yeah.
John, do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. So now, Dawn, do you want to come back?
And so John, on this article, when we're gonna take out K, but there'll still be a new K, but it'll be what article, what subsection L is, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, what else do we need to go through before we adopt the warrant?
Okay, so moving on.
Right,
Are
Matt,
they
Yeah,
still
just a
coming
quick,
in?
yeah, just a quick comment. I'm just, yeah, I hope that there'll be some amendment, changes to that article. I hope it acts as a placeholder, and there are some, exempt cottage colonies and hosted stays, and I hope there's some work and it's improved, because as it stands now, we've taken out by putting it in the way we have, maybe it'll be passed, but we're basically grandfathering everybody and not, and probably going backwards. So, I hope that, I hope there's some work done to come out where we need to come out. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, being sensitive to Malcolm's concern. I'm sorry, being sensitive to Malcolm's concerns, and I'm sure the rest of the board has the same concerns. You may want to engage in a discussion with, or set up a process to engage in a discussion with both Mr. Kopko and Attorney Cohen to see if we can't whittle down the number of general bylaw articles that will actually go forward at town meeting.
Thank you, John.
Okay. So moving on to just before Article 63, there's a little note there. We had these couple of articles about bicycle and helmet bylaw amendments. This got very confusing because of what state law allows and doesn't allow, and what our current bylaw says. Our current bylaw is not exactly accurate with state law, which is probably why it's generally advisable not to reiterate things in bylaws if it's already in state law, because when it changes, we don't always know about it, and then we have a kind of a messed up bylaw. So I have not figured out how to prepare what was being proposed here. And the other approach to this, I think, was rather than trying to figure out something that complies or comes close to state law, and there's pending legislation apparently with regard to regulating e-bikes. Perhaps what should be done is the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee could gather testimony from people, anecdotal accounts, documented accounts, and bombard the legislature with requests to get this dealt with, because it's a dangerous situation. John, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah,
I know you and I struggled with
I
this.
would add, Libby, there was an article, I'm not sure if it's 64. Actually, I think the committee had recommended an article for amendments to chapter 375 of the town code, but as it turns out, those are traffic regulations adopted by the select board. So I think one of the things you might want to look at is putting all of these requirements in your regulations, and that would be a public hearing by the select board and adoption of an amended regulation. So that is something that needs to be looked at as well. The bottom line is that does not require town meeting action.
John?
Yes.
Are you all suggesting, Libby and John, that we just remove this? Is that where we're headed here?
Yes.
Okay.
And you do these other couple of approaches.
Go ahead.
I'll move to remove it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call? Matt Fee,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously.
Okay, great, thank you. Article 64, I think you already talked about this. I think this is a note from the earlier version of the warrant that this was added, the car rental agency amendments. Oh yes, and I think I just wanted to point out to you, maybe this happened last week, I can't quite remember. We added, town council added this, the home rule petition contained within this article. To allow, hopefully, the town to amend this bylaw with respect to the rental vehicle medallion regulation and the what a licensed rental agency is. So yeah, I think you've already seen this.
This was on the warrant last week.
Yeah, there's just an old note. Okay, then we have some citizen articles. Okay, so getting into the coastal resiliency articles, last week, Article 66. This is a sewer district map change that would add parcels in that eventually will be connected to new sewer extensions coming off properties from Baxter Road. And the suggestion was made to move this article to the beginning, I guess to demonstrate that planning is taking place with regard to this Baxter Road situation. And then we have the home rule petition for the Coastal Resilience District. Lots of comments were made on this, and I think it's pretty well, final. And then we have the bylaw amendment, Article 68. I do have a note there, and John or Vicky, if you're on, I don't know if this ever got answered. This comment I have about, does a plan exist and what is the title? I don't know if I got an answer to that.
Yes. Libby.
Yeah, I did get an answer.
Vince is working with Arcadis to create a plan that will show the boundaries for this. And yes, so he's having plans done for the districts.
So I think this article should just say on a as shown on a plan which is on file with the office of the town clerk.
Got it. Okay. And then, oh, sorry, this Article 68, that was actually, the lease. That was actually, I'm sorry, I'm trying to multitask here with making these changes.
So,
this is the lease for the Baxter Road property for the erosion control project, seeking authorization for that. And the next article is the bylaw. And we've gone around a little bit about where this is going to go in the code. So Vicky, late in the day, you didn't like my chapter 66 idea, which I understand. And so I was suggesting 66A. Is that any better?
Well, I've spoken with Vince about this, and he and I are of the opinion that this bylaw is really intended to create districts for funding purposes for these projects. That's really what the intent of these districts is for. And so it's not really for maintenance, protection of coastal areas. You know, it's not defined by residential areas, which some of these districts will, be in their coastal sub districts. There will be residential districts. So both Vince and I think that it should stand alone as a separate chapter.
Okay,
and
so
part of the chapter 66.
Okay, so I was trying to figure out what's the number. I looked through the code myself and I was just trying to figure out a kind of a logical place to put it. So I guess between now and tomorrow, if the board's okay with this, we need to figure out the number.
So was there a space after 66?
Before, let me
No,
look.
Vicky, I think what Libby is saying is that 66A would be a separate chapter in the code, correct?
Right, correct.
And so that would be fine.
Madam Chair, I see that Vince has his hand up. I don't know if he could enlighten us on this.
Vince? I just can't see everyone, sorry.
Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. So I guess I had a quick review of chapter 66 today, and I was looking at what was in it and how it works and what it's intended to do. And it's basically about behaviors in the beach, in the coastal zone and open space areas. And it talks about things like limiting numbers of people, alcohol consumption, amplified music, fires and that kind of thing. So there's definitions in that. And I guess I'd have to ask Vicky or John Giorgio if there would be any relationship between 66 and 66A. If they're totally distinct and none of the definitions from 66 would translate to 66A, then it should be okay. But if there are definition translations, then that's a different story.
No, it would, Vince, it would be a separate, separate chapter in the code. So they wouldn't.
Yeah. Sorry, John, completely standalone. And my only thought about it is that when you're looking through the code for things, it's helpful if they're, the two coastal things are near each other, even though they're not really related.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna go with 66A. We're good with that?
Yes.
I think so.
All right. And I don't think there was anything else. This was the sort of bundle of coastal resiliency related articles. I don't know if anybody has. Well, there would that. I think we're good with it.
I could give a few pointers if it helps.
Yes, go ahead, Vince.
Thank you. So I wasn't at last week's meeting, but I got to watch the recording and try and develop responses to what the board was talking about. And there were some pretty nice points that helped us redevelop and refix this. There was questions over the name. So we added to it, made it the Islands Coastal Resilience District to respond to Matt's question on that. And there was questions about how this works. So just to give a very high level and very brief overview, if you imagine that there's going to be two levels to this, so the Islands Coastal Resilience District, that'll be the whole area, and then we can do sub-districts from that. If you think that in the CRP, there's very large island-wide type projects that benefit everybody, that's the island level. I would imagine there would be very few, and that would be the occasional type district level choice. Then the more frequently used would be the sub-district one, where communities would come to us and say, we've got this issue, we'd like to band together and have a coastal resilience district to respond to a problem. That is coastal resilience related, obviously. Then that's how that one would work. So we'd have it at two levels for big projects and for small projects. And then everywhere from Nantucket to back to Sconset to Hulbert Ave would have a mechanism that could be used to have local funding districts to respond to the problems that they're seeing.
Okay.
Thank you, Vince.
Quick question. Vince, do you imagine this would support, grant applications as well?
Yes.
Potentially? Yeah. Okay.
Any way to make it cheaper.
Great. Matt?
Yeah, I like the idea of calling it an island-wide coastal resiliency district and then putting the others into sub-districts. I just hope that if this is passed, I hope this is passed. I think the funding is going to be the key to all of this. But I do hope that we do not give up on betterments, because this could take, as Vince, you've heard me say this at Crack, this could take years. at the state level. So I hope
Appreciate that.
we still push forward with betterments in the short term. Thank you.
If I can just add
Yes,
to that a little. So this does not take betterments off the table. Betterments are still there and betterments are still a choice. And we talked initially about bringing something back to crack to understand more about betterments, and that's still a very good option that I think we should pursue so that we can understand all three tiers to it.
okay. With everyone?
All right, okay, so, if we're moving on, then we've got a bunch, okay. Oh, home rule petitions, Article 79, Erica, starting with that. We had a discussion last week about taking them out, putting them in, the ones that have already been approved, are we sort of reauthorizing? And I talked to town council about this, I talked to Tom a little bit about it, and I think we've all agreed, let's just leave them in for consistency, because that's been our practice. So if you're all okay with it, we're gonna leave them in.
I'll make a point. I would rather see the NPEC one taken out, because I think if it's still good in Boston, is it, Tom?
Yep.
Then I would say take it out so we don't have to have another contentious thing at town meeting.
Okay, so that is,
That's fine.
I gotta figure out where that is.
May I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
If we left it in and it was voted down, what would be the consequence? Does it negate the home rule petition?
I'm guessing maybe John.
I'm not sure if Tom, Tom has a perspective on this, but I think if town meeting voted it down, you would want to notify the legislature that town meeting did not vote in favor of it. And the legislature, I'm guessing the legislature wouldn't act on it at that point. I mean, the last one passed by one vote. If now it's defeated, I think that would probably dispose of the home rule petition.
Having sat through the hearing, it's very unlikely that's going anywhere in Boston anyway. They were, it was incredible. But so, either way, I just think we've got a lot on this town meeting and,
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would support that. Take it out.
Oh, Brooke, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was just curious.
I think we should just take it out and let it continue through its process, and the NPEDC is, simultaneously working on another proposal, so.
Madam Chair, we can also put it back on next year. It's good for another year.
Yep.
Okay, so that is Article 89, and right before Article 89 is a new home rule petition, which relates to one of the real estate articles conveying a parcel called School Street from the county to the town. I don't know, Vicky, if you can explain this in 30 seconds or less about why a home rule
I'll do my best. So I had determined when researching this School Street, I found that the School Street is not actually under the custody of the select board, but is actually under the custody of the county. There was a county taking. So in order for us to be able to dispose of this property in the fashion that is described in the real estate warrant article, there has to be a transfer vote. And so both the real estate article and the home rule petition have the transfer vote authorizing the county to transfer this portion of School Street to the town for purposes of conveyance. And then the terms of the real estate article would be voted on as well.
Okay, thank you, Vicky, for that. Article 94 is, I just wanted to point out to you, it was in there last week and we've now discovered it is not needed. there is authority, statutory authority the select board has to acquire this property needed for a sewer replacement project, so we're gonna take that out. And Vicky, Article 95, these Linden and Hawthorne Ave articles, there's still a comment there.
So
Is that addressed?
yes, it has been, Libby. Linden and Hawthorne Street are really paper streets. They have been, they're going to be disposed of ultimately with some of the neighbors that abut this, but these will be little portions of the streets that run from Ocean Ave down to Atlantic, to the Atlantic Ocean. So the plan, there is no recorded plan at this time, and there is going to be a map that is going to be prepared for town meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I think I just wanted to point out to the board, there's a real estate conveyance in Article, it's gonna get renumbered, but it was, I think it's Article 97. Are these being shown on your screen?
No,
No.
not anymore.
Erica, thank you. Yeah. Grove Lane, okay, 90. Go one down one more. Yeah, the 99 it is, sorry. So these questions have been answered, and I can take the comments off, but I just wanted to point out that Article 99 does contain a parcel that 35 Grove Lane, that is currently under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. And I spoke with the Natural Resources Director today about that to make sure that the Concom knows that this is being proposed here. And hopefully they won't have an issue with it. But it was too tight to try to get it before them at a meeting. And there's a companion home rule petition for this. So just kind of FYI for you. Oh, Vicky, sorry, I'm sorry, Vicky.
So I just want to point out that this article has been updated. This doesn't have the updated language, the revised language that I had put in, because there would need to be a transfer vote taken from in order to transfer 35 Grove Lane from the Conservation Commission to the Select Board in order to be able to actually dispose of this property. And there is such an article drafted already.
Okay, so Vicky, if the board's okay with that kind of minor technicality, Erica can work with you tomorrow on this.
Sure. I think you have it, but just let me know.
Yeah, well, if we go down a little further, maybe I put this in after I gave it to you, Erica. Go down to like 103. Okay, go down to the other one that's doesn't have a number. That one there. Vicky, is that the one? Oh yeah, I was confused.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to take up the board's time with this, but I was confused about which article is. Do we need both of these? Or does one replace the other? It wasn't clear to me. Does 103 actually replace 102?
103 replace what? No, it doesn't replace 102.
Okay. Well,
I think it's 103 and 104, isn't it?
Yeah, it's past 103.
Right. So this is the one that doesn't have a number right now, I guess would be 104. So that is the correct article. The only thing that I had done, though, I sent you a subsequent article taking out the language of county transfer. So it would just, the title to this article would just read real estate conveyance School Street, Surfside.
all right. If the board is okay with, again, that minor technicality, this can be fixed tomorrow.
Is everyone okay with that?
So 103 is coming out and then this unnumbered one will stay with the strikeouts?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think that is it. Oh, sorry. The ballot questions. Did we want to do the same thing here that we did earlier? So put
them in the same order as they
Yeah.
are. Town meeting
Yeah,
warrant.
okay, so we can,
Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
okay.
So with the changes, additions, alterations, are we ready to adopt this tonight?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
not, not to bring up the elephant in the living room, but I don't think the board reacted to the question about the salaries for elected officials.
Yeah, you still never made a determination on that.
Oh,
And so if you don't do anything more, that will not be on the warrant.
Brooke, did you want to make a proposal or do we want to let it lie?
No, I'd like to make a motion to improve across the board by $1,000. So that would change select board members to 4,500 and the chair to 6,000. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
Yep. I'm going to make that motion and see what the board thinks.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Matt, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was thinking about this from sort of a different perspective. You know, because I bring this up every time that we do we raise fees and things, and what I think we should be doing with the select board, and I think with other non-union and with all the fees, is I think we should be doing like a 2% or cost of living automatically. And we should put a policy in place that does that, so that in that way, because our landfill fees go up automatically. You know,
Right.
and
Right.
and it compounds and it goes up a little bit every year, and it keeps us where we should be. And I think that we should be doing that with pay and other stuff. And I think the first thing then is setting the proper amount, like sort of for building fees. Are we charging enough? We should get to the proper amount, put a cost of living or 2% on everything, and then be done with it.
I mean, maybe we should suggest, if Brooke would be open to it, the $1,000 increase and just build in a 2% cost of living increase every year.
Well, I want to take it more than just us. I want to, the select board, I think we should be doing it with all fees. And I'll give you an example. When we sort of 25 years ago, we were paying, and I'll have the numbers wrong, but let's just say it was $6,000 for a sewer permit. And then it went on at that amount forever and ever. And 20 years later, it was $6,000, and then we went up high. And
I totally agree with you.
I know, and then people were complaining, and it's like, wait a minute, if that had just gone up cost of living, it would have been more than the 16 we're paying now. It would have been like 20 grand. And so I think, so I think that should be a policy across the board. And then, so that's just, I was going to bring that up under select board comment, but we're talking about this now. I'm not sure I want to vote $1,000 raise on 3,500, but so I'd be happy with 500, or, I just think so because we are, as Megan pointed out, we are able to get insurance. I didn't take that the first time I ran, but I have the subsequent years. And when I'm feeling overworked or, feeling bad about it, I just think about that. Sometimes it helps, but, so anyway.
I mean, I think maybe the thought process here was to recognize that the stipend, and it really is a stipend and not a salary. When we're talking in real terms, it has not been increased in probably a couple of decades. And to maybe do a little bit of a catch up, because one thing that should be recognized now that it's been so openly discussed is the health insurance portion, and that most of the select board members have taken it for a number of years. The stipend of $3,500 doesn't cover the amount that you have to individually pay to be on the insurance. And maybe it would make some sense to align it so it at least covers the portion that you have to pay out of pocket. But which is not an issue for me because the chair's portion does cover it, but generally there's been a recognition that the chair has some additional duties. So there's been a differentiation, but I don't think, and I think that this initially started with a conversation about going up to something that you might call like a real salary, which would be more in line with if we went to a town council form of government, which is one of the things that they do need to discuss in their deliberations in the committee on that, is whether we as a community want to budget, say another $1 million a year to fund town council salaries. So either way is fine, but I think it might make sense at this stage to do some kind of an increase and potentially institute a yearly cost of living increase. So this conversation doesn't really need to be had again and again. And if we change government, then everything changes. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we want to take it as is? Okay. All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
No.
Malcolm McNabb,
No.
Brooke Moore,
Yes.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Well, I'll vote in favor because I think it does make sense to do some form of an increase. So we'll add that to the warrant. Anything further?
No, if we're ready, I'd move to adopt the warrant subject to technical changes and changes we made tonight.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Are there any committee reports? Matt?
Yeah, and my comment was, I made it earlier, I was gonna say, I think we should do this across the board. And I think the select board do deserve a raise. Wasn't against that, but I do think I would like to see it across the board on all fees, et cetera. A lot of them have stayed pretty stagnant. And I think that would make our lives and the staff's lives a lot easier. Get them to the right place and then put them on autopilot.
Now, a lot of fees, I believe we can do as select board policy decisions with a public hearing, correct? Where the stipend for the board does have to go to town meeting. So we could definitely put that on as a discussion item.
Right. Right. And that's fine. And I think but you get the gist of what I'm saying. I think it would just put it on autopilot, make it easier across the board so we aren't falling behind.
Understood. Anything else for committee reports? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Carries unanimously. See you all later.